thanks for the introduction and invitation. I'm at the RUTGERS Sky, School of Communication and Information. And I'm going to mostly talk about things I've done at Yahoo with my research at University of Berkeley, but I'll mention some of the things currently. Just as a general framework for the talk, I'm going to show you this diagram. I'm going to talk about social media. And in particular, I'm going to talk about how we take this new kind of information that's available on the web and do various things with it. This is the cycle, like going back from the community, and the information that's available there to the user. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about how we look at the community contributed data and analyze and extract patterns from it to be useful in various ways, including in ways that we can support and motivate the users doing their own tasks. Talk about a couple of applications, mobile applications actually that we build to do that. But then we also looked at why the users are doing social media things and giving back to the community. So this angle of why the users do that, why the users do this will help us encourage and enable the users to contribute, to continue contributions to these sites. So I'm going to start by talking about extracting patterns. Talk about a couple of applications and a couple of studies that we did, trying to understand what are people's, why are people behaving the way they do on these platforms. So, social media. What is social media? I'm not going to have an explanation, but let's just say I'm looking at media where the participation of individuals is significant. So it's not like the comments on the New York Times article, which are down at the bottom and many people don't pay attention, but something like Facebook or Flickr or any other site where the contribution of the user is prominent and it's holding the site up. So that's the main thing the site is built on. And this information that people are giving us on those sites are really changing the way we can reason about the world, understand, communicate, understand the society. So I'm going to talk about a few ways that we can do that and a few ways that we can influence them. Mostly I'm going to use Flickr in this talk, but at the end I'm going to talk about a couple of new things that we're looking at that you all know as well. But I'm sure all of you have heard of Flickr. Raise your hands. How many Flickr users we have in the room? Flickr users. So just to recap for all of you that's not exactly sure what's going on Flickr. This is a photo that I uploaded to Flickr with some of my respected colleagues, the ACM Multimedia 2007. And so I uploaded this photo, and I added the title to it, and I added the description, and I also added tags. These are short text labels that somehow relate to the content or the context of the picture or whatever I was thinking at the time I was adding those tags. The tags that you see here, some of them were added manually, actually by sometime in the mobile application I'll show you later. But I selected explicitly, Enter was selected these tags, but some of them were added automatically by the phone I was using. So on Flickr, where you see tags by the photo, they could be added by a human being or by a machine or I guess there are no other options for now. Flickr also supports location information and also time. I'm not going to show this photo, but so the time is the time that we get from the camera. So when we upload the photo to Flickr, it takes the time from the header, the image, and remembers that metadata, but also the location that I can again either assign manually. So the big dot here represents the location of this photo in Augsburg, Germany. So manually I could actually drag the photo onto a map on the Flickr website, or it could be captured automatically by my device, such as I don't know now the iPhones will do that automatically, record the location in the photo, and Flickr will show it on the map automatically when you upload. Any questions about the metadata? There will be a quiz. What we get on Flickr is essentially 100 million explicit marks of attention. So people are saying, by taking a photo, they're saying, I'm paying attention to this place at this time. Take a photo everything. We know the location and the time of the photo. And we basically get the idea of there's something important there at that time for that individual. And when you have enough of them, then patterns start emerging of what's important for people where. And that's what I'm going to leverage in the first part of the talk. But of course, these marks of attention are far from being perfect. Right? There's a lot of noise, a lot of errors, a lot of bias, and very little structure. So, for example, you see the little pink dot that represents the location of this picture. What is probably too small for you to see is that picture clearly from Paris was unfortunately tagged Eiffel Tower, and even that was a spelling mistake. While the location, that pink dot, if you actually carefully consider the Paris map, is 6 kilometers away from the tower and 5 kilometers away from the Arc de Triomphe, which actually appears in the photo. So everything about this specific photo is suspect, right? We're not sure about any specific photo in the set, in Flickr, but yet patterns will emerge. How many of you know California fairly well? Right? Do you know? So let me just. This is the beginning of the quiz. This is a subset of the tags on Flickr that are subset of the photos on Flickr represented by pink dots. So here there are 76 photos, and they are tagged with Tahoe or Lake Tahoe. Right. So all these pink dots represent photos. One thing in common, Lake Tahoe. So you can see that a lot of people taking photos in the Lake Tahoe area or tagging the photos Lake Tahoe. Some people maybe on the trip to Lake Tahoe from San Francisco use that tag. Some people saw a lake in Yosemite and thought that was Lake Tahoe. But in fact, I'm checking front page right now. Crazy. Okay. Let's go away. Yeah, we've seen. I think we're back. Okay. So I'm going to show you a different set of photos. Subset of photos on Flickr that all have the same tag in common. This is the quiz part. You tell me what tag this photo represents. Ready? Oh, I was going to say first that this could not be. It doesn't have to be a wrong tag. It could be that somebody saw a lake recently that reminded them of Lake Tahoe and decided to use that tag. There's no right or wrong. There's no sense of ground truth in tagging. So, which tag is this?
Switzerland.
Skiing flows with an Alps. Very good. Right, so these are subset of the photos on Flickr that
Close to Barcelona.
Alps. The Pyrenees, they look a lot like the Alps. So yeah, some people were off, but again, the emerges, the pattern emerges of what the Alps or where the Alps are. I used this in my another one in my Northern European talk last month. Fjord, very good. This is a little more specific, US-centric.
Some highways.
Some highway.
66.
66, right. So this is subset of the Flickr photos again that have the tag Route 66 that starts in Chicago. I guess it goes to LA or the other way around, including some people that went way off their exit. Possibly that died. But again, you can see that the pattern is similar to the data. And last one, this I promise, this is a difficult one. Get it? It's not the village.
Try that.
It's not Rebecca. More neighborhoods. Where is it?
Fireworks.
East and lower east side. Right? So it's a tag lower east side. But the idea here is that if you ask, any two New Yorkers, what are the borders of the Lower East Side, I'm not sure anyone can tell you, but collectively, the Flickr users are actually just like everybody's taking a photo, a single photo or more, tagging it with location, and using a tag already side, and they're telling us what is the borders that they think, what the cognition of the crowd thinks that Lower East Side is. So after talking about it for years, Flickr actually started exporting. I've been talking about it for years. Flickr now started exploring these polygons that are based on very similar idea. You can now download data sets of polygons that are based on what Flickr users enter as neighborhood or other geographical elements boundaries. So you can get here, for example, the Lower East Side, the Loho, the Bowery, all kinds of neighborhoods that you may not recognize, but they exist in the Flickr data set, and people, by taking photos, adding metadata, actually told us what are the regions for these areas are relevant. So
is that just an enclosure of all the possible tags with the?
This is kind of some of it. It's not just simple enclosure. It's kind of an alpha shape, with some parameters. It ignores, outliers and stuff like that. So yeah, they actually make available the code that was used to generate these. This specific visualization is available from boundaries.com, Taylor.co.uk, and I'll have slides later. So going actually to our research, when we looked at the Flickr data, we said, okay, there's 100 million mods of attention, and Flickr is using those pink dots. And this is kind of ridiculous. Eventually, they moved to showing just the latest or the best rated 20 images for every location. So if I'm looking at San Francisco, I can see 20 pink dots at a time, and I can just scroll through them. Right, so if there are a million photos, it doesn't help me know anything else about the photo and about this map area, because then I'll just have to click next over 20 plus one more times. But we thought that the pink dots actually tell us something. Right? We want to be able to create a meaningful representation of the patterns that emerge from the pink dots that gets better and not worse when more data is added. And the intuition behind the algorithm was very simple. First is that more activity in some location, activity means more photos or photographers are active in a location, might mean that this location is in some way more important than others. And the second is that if there are tags that appear somewhere specific on the map that do not appear elsewhere, that also means that that location is somewhat meaningful, and also that maybe those tags could be used to represent that location. Here's a very simple illustration. And we used a simple TF-IDF, information retrieval document-based approach, and you can see here, 3 dots are 3 photos, 2 photos taken here. These were taken by user 1, and this was taken by user 2, and they use the tag bridge. Like user 2 and user 1 use the tag bridge, user 1 use the tag car for this one. So the idea is that, first of all, this location is probably more important than this location because there are 3 photos and 2 photographers here. And also the tag bridge that appears here twice by 2 different users is probably good to represent this location compared to here, car, museum, car really appears all over the place, so there's nothing really significant in that one. So I'm not going to go into the details because you can all read. It appears on the paper. I'm going to have paper pointers in the slides as well. Those are going to go out. So you can find that later. But 40 million photos after the fact, we get this representation in San Francisco. So if you ever been to San Francisco, you know that this captures a lot of the major things that appear in the data. Again, nobody told us that we should pick Golden Gate Bridge or we should put it here on the map. Nobody told us that the balance of my cars is here or that it's a good tag to represent it. But the algorithm and the data that we have from those users, I think when we did this in this map area alone, there were over 700,000 photos or something like that. The participatory knowledge of San Francisco is actually what's showing here. So we made a little prototype out of it. Let me just play around also live. You can search for tag maps or World Explorer, and you can get to this visualization. And I'll try not to get in the way. It's basically what you've seen before, but it's kind of dynamic, and I can highlight the tag, and there'll be a query to Flickr, getting me all the photos that are tagged with this tag, taking in this location. So this is taking more recent photos, so it also shows me what else I can see around there. So let me actually go to Lombard Street, which you probably all know is that curvy street, famous for the different movies. So basically, it's a tour guide, an automatically created, community-based tour guide of San Francisco. Now, the nice thing about it, it doesn't stop in San Francisco. We can actually zoom in and out to arbitrary level, and as long as we have enough information, we're going to have things come up. So when we zoom in, come on, Yahoo, you don't need to do search now, so it should be quicker. Very slowly loading the map tile. And when we zoom in, we get different things, right? Alamo Square, maybe it's not, that's important to show when we're looking at all of San Francisco, but when we zoom in, it's definitely something that's relevant. And let me zoom in once more for my favorite detail. Today, to plug in the wire. Slowly loading. So if I zoom in twice into the Presidio, suddenly a very local feature showed up. We thought this was a bug the first time we saw it in code.
What's Yoda?
Yoda.
That's the neighbor? That's a Star Wars guy.
Yeah. So it turns out there is a life-size statue of the master in the Presidio, which you all visit the next time you go. And a lot of people on Flickr just go and take a photo. There's no way I would have found out about this if it didn't come out of the data. Of course, after I did, I went and took my own photo and uploaded it to Flickr. But that's really the master right there. And conversely, if I zoom out to the state level, then Yoda, of course, will disappear, and we'll start thinking things that are important to California, like Yosemite, not neighborhoods in San Francisco. We can go to Boston and see the same thing. In fact, we can go all over the world, and wherever we have enough data, we need a few thousand photos. We are going to give meaningful results. You'll see things that are interesting. I like it. The example when you zoom out of Boston, and only Fenway and Harvard appear on the map, which is really interesting. Fenway is a baseball stadium. Any questions about this? What's that?
Shows you what's important.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it based on the number of tags as well, or some kind of a priority attached to the hierarchy of the map?
So the algorithm, the way we do it for different levels on the map is we do it independently for every level of the map. So we take all the information and do computation on the bounding box that fits every level that you may see. So there is no crossover between hierarchies, which is one of the problems in this visualization. Actually, it could be jarring when you zoom out. Probably things should really fade out and not disappear. They fade out, and Kendall Square disappears. That's a problem. But yeah, we did it individually for every map level, every region, all over the world.
Basically, how do you know Kendall Square appears in which hierarchy?
In what? In which? So basically the two heuristics that I described before. And we have a bounding box. We look at the photos. We do a clustering. We look at the number of photos in each cluster. We look at the tags. We have a scoring. That's it. Very very simple algorithm. So the central the cluster that was chosen, the high ranking, the highest ranking tag will be the one that's shown first. India, just we can play with this more at the end. This is goat, sacrifice to the gods of lab demos. So when I pulled up Golden Gate images before, we actually just pulled the recent images with that tag from that location. But since we already know what are the landmarks, what are the things that are important in every location, we can actually now use computer vision in a more robust way that is generally being applied, right? Because we know what we're looking for specific geographical landmark, we know we have a pretty good candidate set of photos to start with, and we want to be able to get the representative shots of Golden Gate Bridge, and not, like I mentioned before, shots of somebody taking a photo of their grandmother that happened to be on the Golden Gate Bridge at the time. So I'm not going to talk about the details of how we do it. We'll see in other image features to extract images that have the same object in them, because again we know that we're looking for the same one object, and that gives us a pretty good representative set of Golden Gate Bridge images. So that's described in those two papers, and later kind of inspired the Kleinberg, which is basically a paper from John Kleinberg from Cornell that did a similar thing. Actually looked at the popularity landmarks.
Can someone upload thousands of pictures of some place which is not important at all, and so if you open the software, you see that place?
Right. So it's possible, actually, it will probably be influencing this more than it does our algorithm, because our algorithm has a very strong sense of the user, right? So if your user make multiple contributions, it won't count. The same user can sign up under 100 different usernames and upload a photo from each, and that will bias our work. But there are ways to get around that as well. One of the nice things about social media is that you have a very strong notion of the user information, so you know that the user has been active in the community. You can actually weigh something according to that, right? If there's a job in the social network, or the number of actual communications that they did on the network, so things like that can help you filter out noise making. But our system, to begin with, is relatively robust. We looked at location. Let me just draw in time really quickly, and there are a lot of things we can do with the time data as well. This is one example. This is the Bay to Breakers race in San Francisco that starts in the bay and ends in the ocean breakers in the west. It's a great race if you're in San Francisco in May. Don't mind looking at nude people running. Then that's definitely a place for you. Not everybody's nude. But when we look at the Flickr data, we see that not only we have the geographical patterns, but we also have temporal patterns. Right? It happens every May, like then, right now, May 2008, 2009. So time allows us a few things, right? We can actually visualize things over time. We can extract events or some temporal anomalies we'll talk about. And we also are able to reason about things that happen in a sequence, right? This happens after the other. I'm mostly going to talk about the extraction of events, but just to keep in mind what other things that are possible. So, semantics, what we're going to do with time is kind of look at the single tag and try to say whether the tag is an event-based tag, whether it's something that happens in a specific time and place, or whether it's just Golden Gate Bridge, right, in a specific place, or whether it's a tag like student or dog that happens everywhere all the time. And what we did here, I don't think I have the slide with actual algorithmic details. As I said, we looked at the tag, and we use clustering in various scale to look at how dispersed that tag gets as we go up in time and place. And if actually we measure the entropy, and that algorithm gave us the results the same. For example, dog doesn't have any space concentration, doesn't have any time, but the tag Thanksgiving, has time bias, space bias, and the tag, for example, BYOBW has time and space concentration, and therefore must pretend to an event. This is another San Francisco crazy race where people take their, does anyone know what BYOBW stands for?
Bring your own big wheel.
Very good. Bring your own big wheel. We've been giving this talk for almost 2 years and you're the first one. So bring your own big wheel. These are people, Lombard Street that I showed before, grown-ups, well, seemingly grown-ups that bring their big wheels to Lombard Street and just ride down, get to the bottom and go back up. This happens, I think, on Thanksgiving or on one other holiday. So the algorithm told us, okay, this is something that happens there and then, and just based on the Flickr data and that analysis of multiple scales. Again, the details are in the Rattenberry paper from SIGIR 07. We recently have been looking at the other way around, right? The problem of knowing that an event could happen. So, for example, we have Last.fm, we have a Decemberist show in this is somewhere in Amsterdam, and we're trying to automatically get the content from YouTube, Flickr, or social media site that corresponds to this event. Again, I'm not going into the details, but this was just published in WebDB, and there's another paper in the works with my collaborators in Colombia.
And again, you might have some sort of a quantization noise there because you may call the same thing with different names or similar names, and you are searching for type. Maybe there's a
Right.
quantization.
Right, so for this, actually, it's not just based on the tags. We also look at the time metadata, location metadata. We look at all the text, not just the tags, but also the description and the title. And there are a few other tricks. Yes, but it's not, of course, perfect. I'm not going to talk about what. Remind me again. I'll show you a cool YouTube demo because the idea, even if we get a reasonable set of photos and videos that we think might correspond to the event or might be taken in the event, we can actually do things after we retrieve and presume content to make it better. For example, use computer vision to see if we have the same colors on the stage. Let me just throw in the social network, right? I haven't talked about this. Social media deals about the social network, and we haven't really gone into social network analysis, but there are a few social dimensions that are important in this work, and we consider various ways. This is a screenshot from time maps that shows us the Egypt, Israel, Jordan location. And the things to notice about this is that this is the biased point of view. This is the Flickr user's point of view, which means probably the affluent Western user's point of view, the people who go to Egypt and take photos of the tourist district, right? Versus the San Francisco view that we get from both locals and tourists. And in fact, on Flickr we have enough metadata to probably tell them apart, but we have to remember that fact, consider that fact that we have different social groups represented in different social elements. So there are social patterns that we can leverage in different ways. This is another example of bad visualization, but the idea is that these are the photos with the tag Yahoo Research Berkeley. And if you look at the tag Yahoo Research Berkeley, it will, right, in location, everything will appear around here. Time, it will be between 2005 and 2007. And in a social network, it will probably be just a smaller set of individuals that maybe are connected to me or some house away from like my friends and other colleagues that are close to me in the Flickr social network. It's not very likely that someone, just a tourist walking by, will take a photo and use that tag. So there's definitely a bias in 3 dimensions, spatial, temporal, and social for that tag. So other than actually considering the social network structure, we can of course look at the egocentric views of the network, like what's important to me. I'll show an example with zone type next. We can talk about different groups and start visiting how what different groups are doing in the social network, or different regions in the social network, right? Saying something that's important for this group and not for that. Let me just give a quick example of the groups, and this is actually not work on the Flickr dataset and not work by me, but some other collaborators at USC and Columbia that have done this on the Getty database. And what they looked at is the difference in, this is LA and New York of how different groups use the city. Right? So they looked at Getty images, and they took all the images that have to do with art, to do with fashion, film, and they tried to reason about how the people in fashion are using the city in different, same ways to the people in the arts. And here's the same thing in Manhattan. And I don't know if you can actually tell differences here on need visualization, but the idea is to look at social media from the same elements for different groups of perhaps looking at what the poor versus the rich, or what does it mean for a city that people are using it in a different way.
So the tags here, labels, art, fashion, etc. That's the name of the community that took the picture.
So this is from Getty, so this is hand labeled. Right? So the Getty Images is a repository, a professional repository of images. So they just went through this collection and say, give me all the images that were taken in art events.
Oh.
Right, so that was in a way easy because it was very, very well defined, but it was hard because it
Manually classified.
But potential of getting this information through social media doesn't have to be exactly this information. Other things that are interesting. And understanding from this, what does it mean for example, urban landscape? What does it mean for different cities? That's why I put this out. Let me advance to the next part of the cycle. I'm going to describe two applications that kind of are related to this the Flickr photos application-based stuff, so mobile applications, and then briefly describe a couple of studies that we did in that context. So Sontag is the first one. The name is inspired by Susan Sontag, that back in 1977 said that everything in the world exists to end up in a photo. That was in the days of film when people had to pay for their photos to be developed. But now, clearly, really everything exists to end up in a photograph. And the question is, what is the future? How do we help people both create, capture, and later consume this kind of content? Because you can create, you can capture everything, and consume everything, but it would just end up being a lot of noise. It's not very usable. So back to World Explorer, you can imagine that if I stand here and I take a photo and I have a location of a capture device, I'm very likely to be taking a photo of the Golden Gate Bridge, or maybe one of the things around it. So Zontag actually takes that and into a photo capture application. So that's available for your Nokia phones. N95 was the last phone that was known to work on. And the first thing that it had, that was back in 2005, way before the iPhone, is that you take a photo and in 2 clicks you'll be off of Flickr with location metadata, with time metadata, you don't have to worry about anything, and that was it. Now there are a few iPhone apps that kind of do it, although it's still not streamlined and nice and fast like Zontag did it back then. But what I still don't see from anyone is the tag suggestions, right? As soon as I capture the content, I can go through an optional screen. I don't have to go, I can just throw the picture away. But the optional screen will tell me, oh, you want to add the tag Golden Gate Bridge, and I add a click, or maybe in this case, I was taking a photo at home, so tags 44, apartment, and Morningside Drive appear, so relevant. That's where I live in Manhattan. So there are tags that are relevant to the situation and the context that allow me to quickly categorize photos, like 5 years later, say, oh, where is that photo that I took at home of Eli, in the bathtub, and I didn't really have to work hard to add all this metadata. So the sources of suggestions are personal; they're all context-based, right? So all based on the location, based on the time, and from my personal history. But from my friends' history, because it's likely, like in the Yahoo Research Berkeley example, that what my friends have used as tags will be relevant to me. There are the public tags, just like time maps, right? Golden Gate Bridge or other things that are popular in that location. And there is other external data, like data about events. We have databases that have location and time of events. So if I take a photo at the Decemberist concert that we've seen before, it will allow me to add the tag immediately. The Decemberist will record the name of the concert, record the ID of the event, the database, and automatically the semantic information will be captured on the spot. So that was Zontag. We actually described in that paper a little bit of the patterns of how people use the tag suggestions and how useful they were in various situations. The other one was, I mentioned, was Zurfer, also a mobile prototype that did the opposite. It was Zurfer is to consume all this mass amount of content, right? How to make sense of it, and how to present it in a way that people can actually manage. So Zurfer is handling the consumption side, and it's also a very simple application. We have basically channels of photos. So what you see here, the rows are different channels. So there's one highlighted that appears bigger on the screen, and you can browse through them. Very easy. Just have a Nokia with 4 ways, so you can go right, left, up, and down very quickly. See a lot of information. Photos from your friends, photos from around you, photos that you have taken, so you can always refer to your last photos if you want to share with someone, or just reflect, look at them. Topics of interest that you can define. For example, you could add a Flickr tag that you care about, for example, WINLAB. And then the Flickr interestingness tree. So there's highly rated photos on Flickr that you can just look for entertainment. And you can also, of course, search for any kind of content from the complete Flickr database and create, like I mentioned, your own custom channels. And both of them were deployed. They're still available. You can try them. Not sure how well they still work. I'm not sure who kicks that website out. It's not me. But it's still available if you just search for something like Zurfer. But they were used by thousands of people. And still are, like at least hundreds. We use them to actually try to understand and create better insights for mobile application use. How people use mobile application, social media, why they use tags, how they do, how to make privacy decisions, etc. So for the rest of my talk, I'm going to quickly describe a couple of those studies. Close the loop back here. And the first study I'm going to talk about is the qualitative study that in which we explored why people tag their photos. That was one question that we had. Okay, all these people have those tags, but we noticed that they do it on Flickr, they do it sometimes in Zontag, but they don't really do it on the desktop. They don't do it on Picasa, they don't do it on iPhoto. So what's the missing link there? So this was one of the great interns, Morgan Ames, qualitative study. We did semi-structured interviews with 13 users of Zontag, so out of the thousands, we approached 13 of them, and we did interviews. And in the interviews, we showed them their, we looked at the photo collection with them, and looked at the specific tags, and we asked them about when the context of the photo capture, the tags. We didn't ask them the question, oh, why did you tag this photo, why are you tagging your photos, but we did it for every single piece of content, and from that, performed various kinds of analysis, so we take social sciences to extract the themes of why people tag their photos. Turns out there was a whole bunch of reasons, but let me mention at the start that no one person had one specific reason. So it turns out that everybody had reasons that span all these 4 different squares, and our hypothesis was that actually what brought people to tag was the combination of all of them, not just that one of them exists. So just to go quickly, the organization, this is a taxonomy we created. Organization for self is a motivation that has to do with retrieval, right? I want to be able to find this photo later, so I'm searching for my kid's name. So that's very easy to understand. Communications for self sounds a little bit weird, but think about it like the old photo album. You wrote notes inside of this photo album, not because you could search those notes, but because when you looked at the photo, you want to remember, oh, of course I took this photo at WINLAB. or that's the name of that guy. So that was communication for self. But where Flickr became really prominent was in the social dimension. And the social organization was people making contribution because they knew Flickr is very good about feedback, right? It tells you how many views you have, it tells you if you have any favorite photos that were favorited by others. So people added the tag because they knew others would be looking for that concept, whatever it was, building a bridge, Yahoo Research Berkeley, whatever it was. People would be looking for it, hopefully finding that person's photos and giving him some attention. Of course, they never said it in those terms, but that's what we would extract from the interviews. And lastly, people just used it to explain the photo. He was trying to explain the photo to others. So, if my mom is looking for the photo, at the photo she'll know that it was taken in a new shopping center, just not across the road. This was during our vacation in Italy or something. So I'm going to skip this slide, but we later actually operationalized into a quantitative study that tried to explain the number of tags based on the state motivations that we collected in a survey. We also did a different study in similar methods that asked about privacy decisions. Like why do people make different privacy decisions about the photos on Flickr, right? When are photos public, private, available to friends only, etc. And again, I'm not going to get into the details of that. There's a paper, but there were a number of themes that came up, like security, identity, social exposure, right? I don't want anyone to find out that I went to the bar, I told everybody I was sick, and convenience of sharing are all factors that came into play. In terms of Zurfer, I'm going to briefly talk about the study we did there. What interested us in Zurfer is how people use a mobile application that's location aware and focused on entertainment, right? Focused on giving them something to do or social activity. It wasn't something that they needed to look up, like Google Maps or something like that. And we're wondering what are the different ways that people use it and the reasons that people use it. And again, we did, it was based on interviews and based on data that we collected from the deployment. In the interviews, we did this time 2 interviews. And the second interview, we logged all the time, but in the first one, we actually told the users we're going to log everything that they do in the next period. In the second interview, we actually showed them every single picture they looked at and talked about the context, when, where they were, when they did it. One of the findings was a very little model of how people use mobile applications. We call the different things, different themes that emerge. Task time, downtime, and killing time. And this is the run duration, this is the level of involvement. And as you can imagine, task time was people taking out Zurfer and saying, oh, I want to see if Marco uploaded this photo that he took of me yesterday, right? So they would just turn on the application and look if that exists and you can get out of it. So downtime is, oh, I'm going to take a few minutes off, I'm just going to browse through the photos, so no specific, perhaps involvement, but, kind of, they know what they have in mind, and they know the set time period. They go there because they want to break something else. And killing time was, oh my God, I'm in the post office, there are 50 people ahead of me, I need something to entertain me, it doesn't matter what. So that, from this, understanding how people used it, came up with a few design criteria for mobile applications. Right? If you create a mobile application, you have to think about what are the tasks that people want to do, because you want them to be able to do it fast and without any delays. And then, but you want to, at the same time, to be able to either draw them to or support them in performing activities that have to do with downtime and killing time. So you want them to know, oh, it's going to kill time. This is where I'm going to go to this app because it's the most fun, or it's the easiest to use. Or sometimes, actually, people started Zurfer and we actually had it on the interview. They said, oh, why did you use this? Because it was the quickest thing I had on my phone to get some entertainment. It wasn't because I wanted to see photos. The fastest thing, the fastest way to get to something that will give me some eye candy. One thing to mention, People did much more social filtering on a mobile device than they did in a desktop setting. So on Facebook, you may have 500 friends and you don't bother, it doesn't bother you very much. But on a mobile device, you probably just want to hear about the few people that you care about. So how do we find out which are the few people that you care about? How do we let you do that in an easy way? That's an interesting question. Personalization, when we let people create their custom channels and custom interests, does anyone care to guess what was the prominent feature there? What was the main topic of personalization and custom channels?
Themselves? Themselves?
Not themselves, close.
Kids.
Not kid, but the opposite. Starts with a P. Porn. Porn, of course. So it turns out that even we felt it was we felt a little violated. Even a little research prototype, people were using it for. And Flickr doesn't have a lot of porn. That's a funny thing. Like you have to really create custom filters and stuff like that to get to the adult stuff. But a third of the customizations were related to adult materials. All right. Almost done. Let me just mention Fire Eagle. So a lot of what I talked about with Sontag and Zurfer actually created the inspiration of what is now an officially out product, which is awesomely called Fire Eagle. And the idea with Fire Eagle is that it has applications that update your location. So the problem was with Sontag, we went through this whole difficulty of extracting your location information from the device. Like Nokia, you had to have a signed application to distribute it. You had to write Symbian C++ code, whatever. You had something that gets your location from the device and send it to the server, but then we weren't able to use that in other ways. And the idea of Fire Eagle is that there are multiple apps that can get your location and update the server. And then there are multiple apps that can use this location in various ways. So, for example, now I have actually something that grabs the Wi-Fi stimulus on my laptop and use Skyhook Wireless to update Fire Eagle whenever I open my laptop. And my weather widget, for example, on the desktop will automatically update. Actually, if you go to my website, with my correct location, that also automatically updates because it asks Fire Eagle where I am. So it's kind of a platform that allows anyone to submit and anyone to query, of course, with user permission. So the user can say, Facebook can get my location, but they can only know the city that I'm in, and they cannot know the exact location. My homepage can just know the country, and my weather can know my weather widget can know my city.
This can be done real time?
It depends what you mean by real time, but yes, mostly real
So
time.
can someone know that you are in London?
Okay, if you go to my website, mark you on the wireless, what does it say that I'm in?
Middlesex County.
I guess that's where we. It could be that it doesn't recognize the wireless networks here, but I can try to fix that with my iPhone.
So I heard about a guy who's doing this because he ended up on a terrorist list.
Yeah.
So he feeds that on his webpage that three-letter agencies always know where he is.
Yeah. So Hassan Ilahi, he's now at the San Jose State. He's a funny guy. So he does that without his own server, obviously. But I told him, hey, we should use Fire Eagle. But we don't really want to highlight the privacy implications. We want to feature this as a privacy. Something that helps you control the privacy in a world where it's gradually in a slippery slope of. I think the Wi-Fi networks here are kind of. We'll see what the iPhone gives me the location. So I just started an app on the iPhone that grabs my location and sends it to the server, so it should update. At least you should see the update time, the latest update time. So, going to the future a little bit. You should all check out Fire Eagle. There are a bunch of cool apps, and you don't have to write anything. The widget on my website was written by someone else.
This is a product from Yahoo?
Yeah. If you search for Fire Eagle, I'm pretty sure you'll either find that or something else that's equally as awesome.
Still love here.
Still that?
Wow, 23.
Is it Pacific time?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. Still Middlesex County, didn't get a better fix.
No, good fix yet.
Um,
So how does it localize based on the
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi?
well, so that's the fire eagle just takes a laptop, right, or a bounding box, or name of location. But yeah, you can do it based on RFID, you know where they are. You can do it based on Wi-Fi, cell signals by the iPhone.
But this is using the standard iPhone application for localization.
Yes, on this, yeah, on my I have my Wi-Fi. It's on my Mac. Presumably, it's a database. So, what I'm doing now, there's actually a new opportunity in what I call the 3D, right? It's a social, spatial, temporal area. And I think right now we have a growing amount. Flickr was the first really huge database that had this marks of attention. But what we're seeing now is other examples of what we call the social awareness streams. Like you've all seen I think this is Twitter. This is the Twitter updates. They look like Facebook now. Facebook looks like Twitter now. These are Twitter updates that will very shortly have location data associated with them. I imagine that's what the rumors say anyway. And then we have, I think, they have like 100 million updates per day or something ridiculous like that. So we have 100 million marks of attention or 100 million pieces of metadata, or however you want to look at it, at a given location, or at different locations at different times. This is the Facebook equivalent, almost very simple. Those systems have a very simple model. Right? The model is we have very short posts that are mostly not interlinked between one another. Sometimes they point to other resources on the web. And we have a very explicit and well exposed social network between the authors. So it's different in that way from blogs, where we have very little information of connection between the authors, and a lot of information of connection between the individual posts. It's kind of like the opposite. But obviously very popular and changes the way we both consume and produce updates about our lives. So the question is how to design, understand, and enable the new experiences around the production and consumptions of this social awareness data. How will it change the world, the way we communicate with the world? How will it change the way we consume information about the world? So this is my challenge. Talk about specific ideas and projects if you want to stick around. But as I said during lunch, happy to collaborate, cooperate, work together. So this is a cycle. Let me just recap. All the photos that I've shown are from Flickr. Actually, no proprietary data was hurt in the making of this research. So even at Yahoo, we always use the Flickr APIs and things that are available publicly. And finally, if you're grad students, teaching a cross-departmental, multidisciplinary class on social media, starting this fall, or this fall. It's listed in a bunch of departments and with a teacher, with another faculty from the communication department. So you can just email me or ask me about it after the call. That's it.